Oh, also, silence your cell phones.
Are the judges and timer ready? Everybody ready?
Yeah.
Then I shall begin. Hello, my name is Casey Knapp, and my partner Nelson Abel strongly negate the resolution that the United States strategy of great power competition produces more benefits than harms. Before I begin this debate, I'd like to provide a few definitions. Great power competition will be referred to as GPC throughout this debate. A bloc is a combination of countries, parties, or groups sharing a common purpose. And according to the Center for Strategic International Studies, the Cold War was an ideological competition that pitted two global superpower-led blocs against each other, focusing largely on nuclear and conventional arms race. We have three main contentions to support our case. First, this constant friction between global superpowers is rapidly building on the already immensely tense relations. Secondly, the great power competition causes economic and military overstretch. And finally, the great power competition makes our priorities far too narrow-minded, ignoring other powers. Constant friction between the global superpowers is rapidly building on the already immensely tense relations. The world is in a very unstable position. The central idea behind the great power competition is increasing our country's power to hold more power over other countries. This has a massive, unavoidable flaw in the way that we become more and more threatening as we build power. When we build this power, we directly threaten other countries just the same as they threaten us. A continuous build of power threatens more and more destruction every day. The reason the US and Russia already have enough nukes to kill well over half the global population is because Russia started building its forces and the US responded. That was the Cold War. Now the US is the one building up its forces and other countries are responding. We are putting ourselves in grave danger by employing this strategy. The great power competition causes economic and military overstretch. For the US to use the great power competition strategy, it needs to pour so many resources into the strategy. According to USA Spending, in 2022 alone, the Department of Defense distributed $1.94 trillion to the 6 subcomponents of the military. In 2020, the US spent over 3 times as much as any country in the world, and even more than that in 2022. The US is already in $31 trillion of debt, and that debt is increasing by tens of thousands of dollars per second. This extent of spending is not beneficial for the US economy. The great power competition makes our priorities far too narrow-minded, ignoring all the middle powers. When it comes to the international stage, there is only so much that the United States or any single nation can do. In putting such a massive amount of our attention toward dealing with the most powerful countries, namely Russia and China, we would be overlooking a huge portion of the world. As it is, middle powers also hold enough to have disastrous effects, and ignoring them puts the United States in great danger. According to Brookings, a Peacekeeper missile, which is an intercontinental ballistic missile armed with 10 300-kiloton warheads, only costs about $238 million. To put that into perspective, the Hiroshima bomb was only 15 kilotons. $238 million may seem like a lot of money, but it is pocket change compared to the budget of middle powers. A bomb like this could kill millions, and if it's accessible to more than just the great powers of the world, then the United States needs to focus on more than just those great powers, or we risk leaving ourselves unprotected. Overall, our 3 strong contentions prove that the United States strategy of great power competition is not beneficial for the US because of the threat to world security, the economic drain, and the inherent flaw of oversimplification that GPC brings. With these reasons, we urge you to vote in favor of the negation. Thank you.
Judges and timer ready? Let me begin. Hello, my name is Admin Hensley. This is my partner Haines, and we stand in the firm affirmation of the resolution that the United States strategy of great power competition produces more benefits than harm. We're defining great power competition as the economic, political, and military competition between superpowers. These superpowers include Russia, China, and the United States. Due to the resolve being related to the U.S.'s strategy, the harms and benefits of this debate should be mainly weighed on how they affect the U.S., her people, her interests, and her allies. Our job on the affirmation is to prove that the strategy benefits this framework and outweighs the harms to it. To do this, we have two main contentions. One, the United States strategy provides strategic benefits by undermining our enemies and protecting our allies. And two, the United States strategy provides economic and political benefits to the U.S. and her people. For our first contention, the United States' current strategy provides strategic benefits. These benefits include reducing the chance of imperialistic wars and helping countries that are already in them. For the latter, there is no clearer example than in Ukraine. Since Russia invaded, the U.S. has worked to undermine Russia's economic and military might. The U.S. has imposed sanctions, as well as worked with its allies to cut Russia off from SWIFT, an important global banking system. Additionally, the U.S. has supplied weapons, intelligence, and training to Ukraine. The U.S. has also put political pressure onto European allies to send support to Ukraine. All this has made it so Ukraine can resist Russia and damage the Russian military. This aid against a large imperialistic neighbor can also be seen in regards to Taiwan, which the U.S. has supported in defending it against the imperialistic actions of China. However, it's not just Ukraine that the U.S.'s strategy protects. The U.S.'s desire to compete with Russia also protects Europe. This is done so through the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO. This is a defensive alliance of which the U.S. makes up 70% of spending. NATO stands as a bastion against Russian aggression and defends smaller states from being invaded. This is important as Russia has a long history of invading its neighbors. These include Chechnya in 1994 and 2000, Georgia in 2008, Ukraine in 2014, and the current invasion as well. Without the U.S. backing NATO and defending Europe, we could easily see the Baltics, Balkans, and Poland under threat from Russian invasion. Our second contention is that the United States' current great power competition strategy provides economic benefits and political benefits to the U.S. and her allies. Against China, the U.S. has put in place tariffs and restrictions on Chinese imports and companies. This is beneficial for several reasons. One is that it works to counteract the loss of jobs due to the U.S. relying heavily on Chinese trade. According to the Economic Policy Institute, the U.S. has lost 3.7 million jobs due to excessive amounts of Chinese imports. By placing tariffs on Chinese goods, this trade deficit with China has started to decrease. These tariffs also damage China's economy, making it harder for the authoritarian Chinese government to compete with the United States. Additionally, these trade restrictions reduce the exposure of U.S. companies to Chinese ones. This lowers the risk of Chinese companies stealing U.S. technology and intellectual property, which has been a major issue in the past. Another benefit the U.S.'s competition with China brings is that the U.S. no longer uses products made with forced labor. In July, a bill was signed into law that prohibits the United States and companies within it to import certain products created in camps by the forced labor of Muslim minorities in Xinjiang. According to the BBC, these camps operate under an organized system of mass rape, sexual abuse, and torture of ethnic minorities. In refusing to stay silent and use these products, the U.S. is sending a clear message that it would not be complicit in genocide. As we can see, the U.S.'s strategy of competition produces more benefits than harm to the U.S. and her allies. This strategy provides strategic benefits by damaging the U.S.'s competition and protecting her allies and their people. And this strategy also benefits the average U.S. citizen by bringing back jobs to the U.S. For these reasons, we stand in the firm affirmation of the resolution. Thank you.
Judges and time are ready. Everyone ready? Yes. We shall begin. I believe this first speaker. I have first question. Okay, so would you agree that mutually assured destruction is a direct effect of great power competition?
I would say that I think it would be there without great power competition, but it's certainly a factor.
Okay, so then, well, this competition is, well, what we on the negation believe is that this mutually assured destruction is because of great power competition. We are seeing that each side is growing its forces because of great power competition. So what I'm wondering is how does that, so wouldn't that be a direct effect of great power competition?
Are you talking about nuclear weapons, in regards to nuclear weapons?
Well, not simply nuclear weapons, but that is the main part of it, yes.
Okay, well, we agree that mutually assured destruction, both conventional and nuclear, is affected by this great power competition,
So
and that
then-
it reduces the chance of war. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Sure.
Thank you. So you mentioned in your case how Russia is simply responding to the U.S. actions, I believe.
Yes.
But how is that the case? Because as we've seen in Ukraine, and with NATO in general, Russia is the aggressor and the U.S. is the one responding.
Well, that's not necessarily true.
How so? We've seen
Well,
Russia.
how do you think that the U.S. would feel if Russia put a bunch of troops on our borders?
And we put those troops on Russia's borders because Russia invaded Chechnya in 1994 and 2000, Georgia in 2008. It's because of Russia's actions.
So, but it's because we put those troops there. It's because we threatened Russia initially that they are the ones that invaded. Now, I have a question for you. In your example about Ukraine, about us economically helping Ukraine,
Yes.
Would you not agree that we can't actually help them more than just economically? We can't actually step in. Not that we want to, but if we wanted to, we don't have the ability to.
You're saying we do not have the ability to step in to Ukraine.
I'm saying that while we have the ability to help economically, we don't really have the ability to step in because of mutually assured destruction.
It would not necessarily be advisable to step in because it would cause a world war. And
Yes.
that's why we haven't,
So-
and that's why we're simply standing off providing Ukraine with economic and military aid and letting them stand against Russia.
But this mutually assured destruction is an effect of great power competition. And so what we can see is the U.S. is limited in its options in Ukraine. Not that we want to make those options, but we are limited. Would you not agree? We don't have time.
For all of you wonderful people, ready? All right. Hello, my name is Nelson Abel, and today I'm going to be delivering a deconstructive speech for the negation. Right off the bat, all of these immense threats that we are currently experiencing have been a direct result of the GPC. The presented protection of mutually assured destruction is inherently detrimental to the security of our nation. Under this strategy, we are putting our faith in countries that absolutely cannot be trusted. We are at more threat now because we've completely given our protection up to an entity that we have absolutely no reason to trust because of its tyrannical nature and complete lack of regard for human violations. Would you trust a complete lunatic like Putin with the power to destroy everything you love with a single push of a button? I certainly would not. Living under this constant threat of complete nuclear annihilation is simply lunacy. It would become desensitized to that fact because of this GPC strategy. Because of the threats built by GPC, at a moment's notice, our entire civilization could be destroyed. And our only course of action is to cause more destruction. GPC, the mutually assured destruction, does not ensure that our country will be protected. It only causes more destruction. So clearly, threat, tension, conflict are a growing problem under GPC, and clearly destruction is not the answer. But that is all that GPC has to offer in the form of security. All of these immense harms are furthered by the economic drain caused by our need for additional defense. We're spending more than ever on our defense expenditure because of these increased threats and tension. We have to be able to defend ourselves, but because we're fueling our own worst enemy, directly giving money to China, in many ways, we are fueling our own worst enemy and putting ourselves more at risk. This increased risk needs increased spending to protect ourselves. This means that this huge amount of money is coming out of all of the American taxpayers' pockets. This is a huge economic drain to our country and is inherently detrimental to us. The first claim that was made by the affirmation centered mainly around Ukraine, but also around Taiwan. The help that we are presenting, apparently, is that we provide a defense. However, we are providing significantly less than we should. We are not able to directly give military aid to Ukraine for fear of escalation and that nuclear annihilation that my partner have presented in such stark light. Under GPC and mutually assured destruction, we are limited in our capabilities to actually help these countries that are so desperately in need. Additionally, this means that we are creating our own worst enemy by causing more Russian conflict. Russia has many times in the past been an invading force, not only because of their drive for power, but out of necessity. Because we are threatening them, we are pushing them to build more power by whatever means necessary. We're currently seeing the negative effects of that, with Russia trying to take over several areas, especially including Ukraine. We are seeing this war driven by our own increase in threats and driven by the Russian need to build power to defend themselves from us. Not only are we putting ourselves more at risk, but we're putting all of our allies at risk as well. So overall, we have seen that GPC has created an immense economic drain and a complete lack of security for our country, and is also hurting our diplomatic relationships with our allies.
Judges, we'd like to request 30 seconds of downtime. Thank you. Judges and time are ready. Hello, my name is Haines, and I will be providing the deconstruction speech for this debate. I'll be primarily focusing on my opponent's contentions, then if time allows, delving into the crossfire and reiterating our own. Now, our opponent's first contention is that there is constant friction between these nations, as well as consistently throughout their case, bringing up mutually assured destruction. Well, mutually assured destruction, by definition, is when large political powers and entities, such as Russia, the United States, and China, have about the same level of technological use, military use, and political use, and causing this to not lead to a catastrophe, not to lead to a World War III. Now, we, as the affirmation, see that this great power competition continues to keep this mutually assured destruction in check. It continues to allow the United States to stay at the same level as China and Russia, lest we lead to an all-out World War III. Now, in their second contention, our opponents mentioned that our military is in overstretch. Well, we frankly disagree. This money that we are putting into our military forces not only funds us to continue with this mutually assured destruction, but it allows us to pay for communication with our forces and other forces and our allies. It also allows us to build bases in areas besides the United States. These resources are well used. It allows us to branch out, to go to our other allied nations and work with them with military might. Now, our opponent's third contention is that this Great power competition is an oversimplification and not focusing on all the important factors. Well, an important factor to take into this debate is part of the great power competition is reaching out to other allies. There's no clearer example than the creation of NATO. The creation of NATO itself is based out of this great power competition. The United States fueled in order to protect itself and its allies, they created the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. We have seen time and time again how the North Atlantic Treaty Organization has protected countless lives, specifically in Eastern Russia, against a Russian threat. Now, during the crossfire, our opponents mentioned that NATO is somehow, or the United States is somehow responsible for Russia's invasion of Ukraine by placing troops there. Well, we can see historically that Russia has been time and time again being aggressive in these areas, in the invasion of Crimea, and the United States and NATO are there to support the underdog. We are there to support the Ukrainian civilians, the people there that without us would be under attack by this authoritarian regime. Our opponents have been mentioning that with this great power competition, it is limiting the United States in its options. Specifically, they reference Ukraine and say that the United States can only provide economic benefits. Well, frankly, that's not true. The United States led the charge with other members of NATO to provide numerous funding, militarily, politically, bringing refugees into Poland, as well as pressuring other NATO members who were more Russian supporters, such as Germany, to giving up their ties to this authoritarian government, joining the fight against this authoritarianism and helping Ukraine. We can see that with this great power competition, that the United States and the power that they have, we can see that they have gone forward, making the world better by protecting these smaller places, such as Ukraine, from authoritarian regimes. Now, to reiterate our own points, at the end of this debate, this is about the human lives that are on the line. The innocence of Ukraine, the people of Taiwan, the people of the United States, and everywhere else across the globe. As the affirmation, we seek to preserve that life. We seek to protect the innocents who isn't able to protect themselves. And the United States is able to do all this and more with this great power competition. Thank you.
First speaker, I believe I have first questions. In your first opening case, you mentioned how we are harming the Chinese economy by implementing trade tariffs. However, how have we harmed the Chinese economy when we are still at such a significant trade deficit with China?
Yes, so what we were saying with that is that with these implications and through this great power competition, we are putting tariffs upon China to boost ourselves back up. Yes, China is above us at this point, but using this great power, we are able to see ourselves increasing. Our GDP will grow, and we'll be able to beat out China. May I ask you a question?
Of course.
Yes, so I believe in the, you guys made mention that the United States, or the Russian invasion of Ukraine was somehow the United States' fault. Could you please reiterate that and explain that to me?
It's not directly the United States' fault, but through threatening Russia, we have made them absolutely desperate to gain power. They're willing to gain this power by whatever means necessary, and historically, when you gain power, you gain it through gaining landmass.
And so
now Russia has moved into Ukraine to invade, to implement more power and be more controlling. So this is a direct result of our threats towards Russia.
And so are you saying that the United States incentivizing this was sending aid and placing more troops within NATO on our borders to already combat this already authoritarian regime that had already taken part of Ukraine, and we could see this threat exponentially growing?
No. By being more powerful than Russia, in whatever it means it is, economic, military, or political, it matters not whether we are placing troops there physically or not. By being such a large industry of warfare, we are directly threatening them even from across the globe without having anyone physically there.
So are you saying that we should just roll over to
May I
these
ask a question?
authoritarian regimes?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So how can you guarantee that Russia or China will not use these nuclear weapons when they're run by tyrannical lunatics?
Yes, so that is the point of mutually assured destruction. At this moment, because of this great power competition, the United States has equal to and is still currently developing new military technologies that will consistently keep us equal to Russia and China. And this is a prime example of why we need this great power competition. This is a natural boon, a benefit of this.
So do you think that Russia will respond in kind by also increasing their power?
So what we are stating is that Russia and China will not, to answer your question about do I think that they will attack us with these nuclear weapons, no, of course not. The reason being is because we have nuclear weapons as well. This mutually assured destruction edged on by this great power competition only means that we are preserving ourselves from a World War III or other global conflict.
Don't you know that other military organizations in other countries, such as a multitude of middle powers, are also able to use these nuclear weapons and could spark the entire industry to on both sides cause this economic destruction?
I'd like to request that.
Oh, it is.
I'd like to request another amendment.
Did you say 1 minute?
Yes, 1 minute. I shall begin. Hello, my name is Casey Knapp, and I'm going to be.
Sorry.
Oh.
Guys, we can't hear them if you're talking, so please don't. Sorry.
Everyone ready? Great. Hello, my name is Casey Knapp, and I'm going to be providing the summary speech for this debate. Now, I would like to look first at some of the points my partner has made of that this great power competition creates economic drain. Now, as I have said in my own second contention, this great power does create economic and military overstretch, but specifically economic, as we can see that we are spending way too much money on the military. We are spending an insane amount of money just to try and compete with these countries, and all it's doing is putting us at more risk. Now, we are pushing countries like Russia and China to build their arms by threatening them. By building our power, they are building theirs too. This is putting us in danger because of mutually assured destruction. We are only increasing the amount of damage we can do to each other, nothing else. I'd also like to go over the Ukraine clash that has happened throughout this debate. In the Ukraine, the U.S. threatened Russia, just as the U.S. has been building up its troops and threatening Russia. Now, and because of great power competition and because of mutually assured destruction, we no longer have the option to step in with our military power, we can only step in economically, and that is restricting the choices that the U.S. has. This is a weakness, and Russia is exploiting it in Ukraine. We cannot give ourselves this weakness, but what's giving us this weakness is great power competition. Now, we can't control Russia. We can't control Russia, not even with mutually assured destruction. As I've stated in my constructive speech, we are creating a constant friction between global superpowers. We are, all we're doing is adding fuel to the fire that is building up each side's power, and we are putting ourselves at risk. Now, my opponents are trying to say that they want to save American lives. Now, what this strategy is supposed to do is save American lives, but all we are doing is putting them in more risk and more danger because of this strategy. This strategy is not beneficial for the U.S. We are not, with our military power, we are focusing way too much on these strong powers. Now that middle powers have the ability to cross. Thank you.
Should I do some timer ready? Oh, yeah. What has come up time and time again in this debate is the human lives that could be lost in a potential war. Our opponents say that the current strategy increases the chance of such a war. They say that the chances of mutually assured destruction come into play somehow increases with the United States strategy. But we on the affirmation strongly disagree with that. And there's no clearer example than World War II. In World War II, the U.S. was an isolationist country. We let Europe do as it would. And what happened? Nazi Germany, an authoritarian regime with parallels to Russia and China, began invading its smaller neighbors. No one thought much of it, but then it started invading its bigger neighbors, and soon it started committing genocide. So this is what will happen if we do not keep these powers in check now. We will lose lives later down the line. We may have to start a World War III in the future because we have no other choice. By working now, by having our military strength high now, we are preventing the chance of that happening in the future. By helping Ukraine now, by sending weapons and helping them economically, we're weakening Russia, making so that Russia will not pose a threat to the rest of Europe for quite some time. And on Ukraine, our opponents have said that somehow we are incentivizing Russia to attack Ukraine. We are simply not. All the U.S. has done is responded to Russian aggression. Again, Russian aggression in Chechnya, Russian aggression in Crimea, Russian aggression in Georgia. If Russia simply did not invade its neighbors, NATO would not be at its border. There would be no need for NATO. Yet Russia still invades. Russia is causing the problem. And the same example with China. China is committing genocide of its own volition, and the U.S. is working to stop that. The U.S. has banned products made in these forced labor camps. The U.S. has made a political statement that will not do what its powers did in the lead up to World War II. It will not stand blindly by as a genocide is committed. Now, all of this makes it so that lives will not be lost. There will not be a World War III. Conflicts will be small, and when they erupt, the U.S. will support the smaller countries against the larger ones, and the larger ones will be brought down. These evil regimes, these authoritarian regimes, who invade countries simply for the whim of it, simply for territory. And the U.S. in its strategy and in its protecting its allies stands against that. And for these reasons, we firmly believe that there are more benefits than harms to the current U.S. strategy. Thank you.
Right. So Russia has many times in the past been invaded. So how do we know that we are supporting, or quote, there to support Ukraine when not a single troop has been to Ukraine to help?
Yes, so we don't have to put troops on the ground due to this great power competition. That's the unique and exciting reality that we live in. The United States and NATO can actually use its power as an international political organization that it's gained through this great power competition to limit the amount of deaths that we need to see and to limit the amount of boots on the ground.
So, in saying that, are you implying that it is better for the people of Ukraine to fight the war themselves? Would you yourself, if you were in a war zone, rather than the United States be like, here's the guns, fight the war yourself? Or would you rather have an actual military help to help you not be absolutely destroyed by a massive force that Russia did?
Well, this isn't about what I would do if I was on the ground. This is about what is happening and what the United States and her allies can do to support. We have continuously seen the United States bringing and rallying an enormous amount of support to Ukraine through NATO and through other allies that the United States has persuaded due to this power. May I ask a question? Throughout this debate, you have stated that the military budget has been overstretched. Yet if we are using said military budget to protect Ukraine, Taiwan, and smaller downtrodden countries from totalitarian regimes, wouldn't you say that this is overall a net positive?
Well, I disagree that we are actually able to help Ukraine in the way that you're saying, because we cannot help Ukraine we're not helping Ukraine as much as we should be able to.
And so
And that's because of great power competition. We have this big military, but we can't even use it because of great power competition.
So are you arguing that we should instead have a Russia or a United States Russo war within Ukraine? That doesn't seem like a great idea.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm just simply saying that we don't have the option to do that, and that is a weakness, and Russia is exploiting it.
Additionally, this great power competition has limited our other options. Our chance at diplomacy with Russia to ease tensions has been completely decimated by this great power competition because we're putting each other at odds ends. So we could have talked Russia down from invading any of these countries anyway, and now we don't even get the chance.
To quickly respond to that, we actually can because of what we've said time and time again, mutually assured destruction. The United States knows this, Russia knows this. We both know that we have the ability to destroy one another, so we both can come to the understanding that we need to work towards peace. We need to work with each other, and this is all coming from this great power competition. Thank you.
We'd like to request the rest of our downtime.
Imagine your home, the place you love most, turned into a war zone. This is what we see in Ukraine. You very likely want direct military help. However, due to the restrictions placed on the United States by these endless risks and threats, we are limited to only providing a little bit of help. We are directly telling the men, women, and children of Ukraine, here's the guns. Fight the war yourself. We cannot help them near enough the way we need to. It is shameful that we are limited to such a limited response. It not only threatens other countries, but it threatens our own country's security, economy, and it limits our chance of diplomacy with all of the countries, even loosely related to Russia or China. This means that the increase in instability and the proliferation of death and destruction that we see every day is caused by this competition. The claim that there will be no World War III is based off of absolutely zero factual data. Russia is completely unpredictable and absolutely untrustworthy in these situations, and is run by an absolute madman who is willing to destroy the world. As it is, the only response to this threat the United States has because of GPC is to cause more destruction through mutually assured destruction, ensuring that we cannot protect ourselves, but we can only cause more harm and death. Through GPC, we have seen greater destruction and the proliferation of death and warfare. Overall, GPC is inherently detrimental to the United States.
I'd like to run the clock on the rest of my downtime. Thank you. That's all the downtime I need. Judges ready? Timer ready? We cannot do nothing. This is a term I want you to think about as I venture forward. The United States strategy is based upon the notion of upholding freedom globally, and that's exactly what the great power competition incentivizes. It's due to our strategy within this competition that NATO was formed. It's due to this strategy that the Ukrainian military is able to support itself against an authoritarian expansionistic regime. And it's due to this strategy that we are able to bring peace among the great powers. Our opponents have claimed that we need to preserve world peace, and yet they also want zero regulations on what we can achieve during wartime. And yet the great power competition solves both these problems. It allows us to build an international alliance of NATO to provide support to smaller, downtrodden countries that are under attack from authoritarian regimes. This allows us to bring support both politically, economically, and militarily to these countries such as Ukraine. This strategy also allows us to have mutually assured destruction with the remaining other great powers. It allows us to both understand that there is something that we can both do that will destroy everyone, and nobody wants that to happen. Russia, China, the United States, none of us want that to happen. And because of this, we have mutually assured destruction. We as the ACT refuse to see a world that authoritarian regimes are able to stamp out the countries and the people of Ukraine, of Taiwan. Because at the end of the day, that's what this debate is about. The debate is about the civilians of the world, whether they are from the United States, Ukraine, or anywhere. Mutually assured, the great power competition allows us to save lives. We do not want to see a world ruled by authoritarianism. We see the world as a global community powered by peace. And we see the world done through the great power competition. Thank you.